Welcome to Command Control Power, Apple Tech Support and Business Talk, the longest-running Apple consulting podcast. For over a decade, we've released weekly episodes featuring real-world stories from the front lines of tech support, in-depth discussions about managing clients and businesses, and conversations with fellow consultants and industry partners. What you're about to hear is a best-of episode originally broadcast on June 21st, 2022, a classic installment from our archives. To hear our latest, regularly recorded episodes, you'll need to subscribe to our Patreon-exclusive podcast feed. Designed specifically for Apple IT professionals, this private feed dives deeper into the challenges of running your consultancy, supporting your clients, managing staff, and maintaining large device fleets. For a modest monthly contribution, you'll gain access to a rich library of bonus content, exclusive interviews, and insights you won't find anywhere else. To subscribe, simply visit commandcontrolpower.com and click support.
How do you love when they say, how come this never has happened before? You take a deep breath, but you really want to say, it's like your car. How come it doesn't start? It always started before.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't start now. Because that's why.
Welcome to Command Control Power, a weekly podcast hosted by 3 certified members of the Apple Consultants Network, drawing from over half a century of combined experience. We talk shop, interview vendors and colleagues, and share what we've learned while operating our technology consulting practices. This is Joe Saponare of CyMac, and my 2 co-hosts are Jerry Zigmont of MacWorks and Sam Valencia of the HCS Technology Group. Hey everybody, it's our 9th anniversary. That's right, we've been recording Command Control Power every week since June 2013. We hope you've enjoyed it. On this special occasion of 9 years running, we're trying a little experiment for the next month or 2. We have a great community of supporters on Patreon, and we really want to show them how much we appreciate their support. So this summer, we're airing new shows every week in the private patron-only subscription. Here on the public show, we'll re-air a classic episode from our catalog of almost 500 episodes, along with the occasional new show. For the freshest content, a peek behind the scenes, and more candid conversation about running our businesses, dealing with clients, fixing tough technical issues, and everything else you love about Command Control Power, we invite you to join us on Patreon so you don't miss any of this great content. Go to commandcontrolpower.com and click support. Pledge monthly, and you can instantly subscribe to the weekly patron-only shows right in your favorite podcast app. Once again, to join us on Patreon and get the latest patron-only episodes, visit commandcontrolpower.com and click support. We hope to see you there, and thanks for listening.
No, we'll do a soft opening here. No, he had the previous tech had a NUC. What do you call that? That little it's an NUC. Somebody look it up, because I'll look it up. You've never heard this before? A Windows-based computer that's called a NUC?
A NUC?
Oh,
this is where you ask breakfast Nook, Sam? That's where you guys
Yes, I know.
drop that in there. He's setting you up.
There's a whole Intel
up,
page. Intel NUC products or NUC products. NUC is a small form factor PC that allows you to customize your mini PC experience and fit in a wide range of cases. So it's like a little tiny Raspberry Pi. It's a NUC.
I thought you said
You've
NUC.
never heard this? Now you're messing with me.
Northwestern Connecticut accent.
It stands for Next Unit of Computing.
Next Unit of Computing. Oh my God, this industry.
I'm not making this up. Here, I'm going
to
put this into chat. This has been around for a long time, and you smart guys don't know this?
Does this have 6G built in? Like what do you? I don't even know what a NUC.
Oh, for goodness sakes! Anyway,
a NUC,
so
like a network operations center.
All right. If you just joined us in process, I took over a network for some attorneys, and they had a sonic wall as the primary firewall. And behind that sonic wall, they had a UniFi switch and a UniFi access point. And that's all they needed, a very small office. They were able to enable the guest network. And so I kind of struggled with it. But one of the things we did in adopting the network was we put in a cloud key. I had to reconstruct the networks, and it was a little tricky getting the Wi-Fi guest network to work. But in our conversation, the previous tech had a NUC.
Like a little corner where he'd go to do some updates and things, or
I think that's the problem. It was installed in the Nook. So
yeah, most people do their work in a
walls.
closet. He was in a
Right.
Nook. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Nobody quit their day job and go into comedy. All right.
Oh,
So
man.
I got to tell you this. This is the craziest story in the world. So up in my area of the woods, we have Comcast primarily. And down in your area, you've got, what's the name of your guys?
Cablevision.
Okay. And so, of course, just like Cablevision, they have that process where, you can lease a router from us, gateway. Was a residential customer. Or you can get one that's through Amazon or some like Best Buy, something that's approved by Xfinity, in this case, Comcast, Cablevision, whatever. The name is on the box, and they have pre-approved modems. So this modem was a DOCSIS 3.1, so it was the latest up-to-date modem. It was not a TMA, DTMA. What's the one with the phone called?
Oh, is it DTMA? That sounds right.
CDMA?
No. Nook. I think it's Nook MA.
DTMA is a public authority located in Hershey, Pennsylvania that provides wastewater treatment services.
Man, we're off the rails. All right, I'm leaving all this in to let our listeners know what I have to put up with. I'm just trying to be helpful.
This is why you're so good at editing, Jerry.
Yeah.
So it was not a phone/internet modem. It was just an internet modem. And it wasn't a router, it was a modem. And it was one that the client purchased and put in place before we started working together. And it was from Netgear. And it actually is the identical DOCSIS 3.1 modem that I have in my network closet. So it works. We have Xfinity here, and I've never had a problem with it. So the client, over time, we had talked about upgrading. They had airports. And we put them in their home, a very, very nice rack-mounted Dream Machine Pro, Unify switch. I think I've got 6 or 7 APs. They're all Wi-Fi 6. So they're all tricked out. They have this really nice stuff. We're trying to just smooth out any hiccups that they have. To digress for a moment, this is what we might consider a high-profile client. Now, you could live in the middle of the Midwest and have a high-profile client, I guess, like Montana has a lot of celebrities. But there's different rungs of high tier. I know, Sam, you've got some pretty high-profile, high-tier clients. So this would be like a B or a C-lister high-profile client, so like probably better than a soap opera actor. Probably not in your next feature film, this person won't be appearing. And they're not even an actor. They're something else. So we try to do our best with all our clients, but you always want to go that extra mile for somebody who's unique or who you have some perception that they might be, dare we say the word, special. I'm not sure what this has to do with the story, but I thought I would put that out there. So they've got this really nice Ubiquity system that we put in, and we're trying to smooth out any sort of hiccups that they have with connectivity, because connectivity in their rural home is very important. Now, they got a pretty long driveway. The driveway goes in about a mile, and it's heavily wooded. So there's a lot of things that could potentially interfere with the coaxial cable that comes through the woods and attaches to the house. I get a message from the client, a text one day. She makes the observation that the internet's going in and out from time to time. Now, this is after we put in all the stuff. And what she does is she goes down in the basement and she unplugs everything and plugs everything in, and everything's great for a while. What? That had to sink in with me. You guys are still there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're still here.
Doing quotes or something like that?
I'm reading about this wastewater treatment plant and their efforts to go carbon neutral.
Joe's fascinated.
Screen Actors Guild, SSAG. I'm just trying to give you another acronym. I don't know. Go ahead, Jerry. Get back to
He's
the
not
show.
even an actor, Joe.
I know. But he's a special
celebrity of some kind.
Special celebrity.
VIP.
So you're not supposed to, you don't do that. I had to think in the nicest way how I could tell this person, no, don't be unplugging things unless you talk to me.
Yeah.
You own the equipment, but I'm in charge, We need to coordinate our efforts here. I said, message me when this is happening. So I start to do some investigation because, again, I'm not getting alerts through Unify for this. And I start to look in the tab which tells you network activity, and the network is going in and out, right? So that tells me the signal coming into the house is too hot because I know all the equipment's good. the signal's too weak and it loses it or it joins it or there's some problem at the pole. But, I can bet 99.9% it's not anything that we installed for her. This is definitely something at the pole. And, the clients don't know the difference. They figured, well, the last thing that happened was you put in this stuff 6 months ago and all of a sudden now it's doing this. So you're to blame. And, it was gentle, but it was, there was a little bit of finger pointing going on. And so I said, look, we need to coordinate this with Comcast, blah, blah, blah. She said, before we do that, we could try to replace the modem. And so she said, well, let's do that because that was the point of least resistance. And I said, yes. And if it doesn't work, we can actually return it because we'll get it through Amazon. So we buy an identical modem to the one she had. I put it in place. It provisions up and it looks like it's good. And I was at the location for 2 hours, got it all provisioned. They were out of town. And that's always the best way to work. You guys know this, right? There's no clients around. It's just you and yourself and just slugging it out. So now I start to monitor the Unify gateway, and I'm seeing, several hours later, the network goes out again, and it's doing the same thing, in and out, in and out. Okay, I'll spare you guys and our listeners the blow by blow, but no less than 6 times did we have Comcast with trucks, with guys climbing poles, trying to figure this out.
Oh,
whoa!
And
6 times.
6 visits from Comcast.
Can I take a guess? All right.
I'd like to answer the question, Alex.
I buzzed in with my answer here. Was it weather related? Did it seem to happen more when something got wet?
No, I've been on those jobs when that happens too.
Okay.
By the time they did the 3rd or 4th visit, the supervisor shows up. We've got a line truck out. We got people climbing poles. We got people replacing all the connection points. They're looking for water in the line. They're looking for damage to the line. So finally, they think they've got it solved. They said, okay, we have a line truck. We've turned up the signal. They tried turning down the signal, turning it up. And, of course, when you're on any kind of shared system, whether it's through coaxial cable or through DSL, a lot of what happens on these nodes not only has to do with what's going on in your house, but, the guy down the street complains about crappy reception. So they turn up the volume, they put an amplifier out on the street, and all of a sudden it kind of throws your modem out. I'm not an expert at any of this, but it potentially could have an effect with other people sharing that same signal in these different drops that they have or nodes. They think they've got it nailed down, so they go and they try to re-provision up the second modem that we bought. This was the brand new modem, which was identical to the first modem. And there was nothing wrong with the first modem. So they can't get the modem to provision. It won't provision. Whoa. And I'm looking on the Unify gateway, and as soon as it comes back up, we get a signal. It's going in and it's going out. And so at this point, visit number 6, you know what these guys from the cable or the internet companies say? Well, our stuff is good. It's got to be your stuff. And I'm like, no. Time out, fellas.
Your stuff meaning it could have been the modem that you spec'd, or, because they could tell the signal on the modem was going out, right? So, it's up downstream of that doesn't really matter.
Well,
whatever you had plugged.
What they told me was that if they had their piece of equipment acting as the modem or the gateway or the firewall, they can monitor the performance and the connectivity of that modem. Right. They don't have very much they can do other than send it a refresh signal if it's you've supplied the modem that they've approved. I said, no, you can't leave. And the guy's like, I'm going away to Boston for the weekend. And the supervisor was still there. So now the high profile client comes down, and it's actually the wife of the high profile client. And she puts the screws to these guys. So there's this big discussion. This is visit number 6, right? And I've got at least 12 hours into this, not including travel. Every visit was about 2 hours, whether I was doing the work or they were doing the work. I was sort of like the general contractor. I was like shadowing this guy the whole time. And they would monitor the signal and they would kind of see it drop, but they didn't see these millisecond outages that were being picked up by the Unify gateway firewall.
They didn't see that. That's interesting.
Well, they would do some sort of spectral analysis where you could see, little micro dips, but it wasn't anything that they could like pinch and zoom and see like, aha, it's doing this. They didn't know. As we're discussing this, The guy goes, well, I've got a CM51 on my truck. You want to start? And I'm like, yes. I turned to my client. I'm like, we'll send this modem back. Let's lease a modem from them. Let's put it on here and see what it does. So the guy goes in his truck. He takes one of their crappy residential gateways on it. I said, look, you need to put this in bridge or pass through, turn off the Wi-Fi. The guy's like, okay. He puts it in. It's been perfect ever since.
Wow.
The heck?
Perfect ever since. And the conventional wisdom is like, I don't want to pay those guys like $8 a month or $9 a month. I'm going to get my own modem. Well, that sounds great until you have a problem like this. They love to throw up their hands and say, well, our equipment stops at your modem that you got from Best Buy or whatever, so it's not our problem anymore. But as soon as you introduce that modem and get it onto a rental thing, it becomes their issue. They gain more ownership on it. My advice to anybody who's listening, if you've got problematic connectivity, forget about saving the $100 or whatever it's going to cost you, $150 a year, not even that, right? $120 a year, let's say, $10 a month, $11. Sure. It's so worth it to pass off the responsibility of that connectivity signal.
If you can get a modem that will work in bridge mode and not have to have Wi-Fi enabled. With Cablevision, they have this new Altice system, and I think it was Altice bought Cablevision or something, and now that's like the default, and I don't even know if you can rent a standard modem from them anymore as a residential customer. As a business, I think you can, and I think they can still do static IPs and things, but for the residential customers, they use this all-in-one thing that's also a cable box. It's like a cable box, modem, gateway, Wi-Fi router. It's all those things, and it's bad at all of them. It just doesn't work well in practice. But so your only choice, at least the last time I looked at this, was to buy a modem, buy your own modem. But to your point, I've always been of two minds on this because I think that there's always a good chance that there's an issue. The cable company can say, well, that's not our equipment, so we don't take ownership, just like you found. But that's a pretty extreme scenario. It sounds like there was an issue with the signal. It seems like they would have eliminated that possibility very early on if there weren't actually an issue with the signal. Right?
Well, that was the other funny thing, too, is like I said during the course of our discussion, I said to them, well, do you have a loaner firewall you could just throw on it and see what it does? No, we've got new ones. You'd have to sign up for that. Wait a minute.
Come on.
Wait a minute. You don't have a piece of hardware that's owned by the company that you could just provision over the phone and just see if it works? And they said, well, we could get one. We could requisition one out. So they're talking about like some little crappy thing that probably cost that company $20 item. It's got to be at wholesale. Right. And so the only way we could try it to see if it would work was my client had to go through the gyrations of signing up for the service. It could all happen while we were there in the moment, but she had to approve whatever the rental fee was. And then he took the nice thing out of the plastic and plugged it in, and off we went. And there hasn't been a blip on that radar since.
Wow. Well, I'm glad you got to the bottom of that, man. That's you must have really had to stay on top of them. And that's kind of like a service that we offer, when clients hire us, is being the liaison with the big vendor that otherwise might have just abandoned the whole thing. They might have said, no, sorry, can't fix it. You had to stay on top of them to see that through to the end. So good on you for doing that.
Here's where you're going to get a little angry, guys, though.
Let me guess.
You didn't bill them a dime.
Nothing billable.
Yes.
50%.
Well, that's an improvement for you, Jay-Z. So
Yeah.
It was a big nut. I sat on my hands for most of those visits. I mean, I was there. It cost me time. The client certainly appreciated it. Were they able to afford it? Absolutely. The full bill. At my going rate, I thought that was a good compromise.
Hey, this is at least a D-lister. They can afford your full rate, man.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's also about positioning it, because maybe you had sold them on the solution, like, we're going to come in and put all this network equipment in, including a new modem, which is my bright idea. It's a good idea. They want to point the finger and, wait a minute, you mean because you recommended this modem from Best Buy or Amazon or whatever, that's what caused all these issues? I often try to hedge this with clients. It's kind of a fine line to walk, though. But when they say, like, this is what's happening on my network, and then I try to ask them, like, well, okay, like, when you notice the signal goes out, does that happen to all the devices at once? I'm not really sure, seems like it's in this area of the house, but I know it happens over here too, and blah, blah, blah. It's like you're trying to gather enough info to say, I'm pretty sure it's not the cable modem, but there's a chance that you're having like two issues. Like you probably have bad Wi-Fi, because the equipment's old and whatever, and, we probably should upgrade it anyway. And hopefully it'll solve all your Wi-Fi connectivity issues, but it's kind of like there's no guarantee. Maybe there's also a signal issue. Maybe there's also a problem with your modem, whatever. And so you may find that even after replacing the network, putting in all this new equipment, that they're still having issues. And that's why I try to hedge it from the start. But at the same time, you want to sell them on what you're recommending. So you don't want to make it sound, it'll help a little. I don't know. I can't, no guarantees. It's like, you don't want to make it sound like they're not going to get a benefit from it. So it's kind of hard to put an asterisk on that and say like, this is a really good thing. You need to get a new network anyway. Asterisk, there might still be some lingering issues, but this is a prerequisite. And then we could, then we can drill down further if we need to. But, we have to start with putting in a new network. I don't know. It's tough. And you don't want them to point back to like the fact that you recommended this in the first place. So I get the discounting on that.
That wasn't the case here. I did not have anything to do with that modem. It might have been their AV guy. So the modem didn't involve me at all, which was good because there was never the finger pointing. The client would say things like, how do you love when they say, how come this never has happened before? How come? You take a deep breath, but you really want to say, it's like your car. How come it doesn't start? It always started before. Yeah. Well, it doesn't start now. Because that's why.
What's the thing that financial advisors put at the bottom? Like past performance is not indicative of future expectations or something. It's like,
exactly.
Yeah.
All jokes aside, that's actually a great addition to what we do. Like we could throw that in our emails because that really does kind of play a role here. Whatever happens, just because nothing necessarily changed and it quote unquote used to work doesn't mean anything when they say that to you. It's really frustrating when they do as well, because it's like, how am I supposed to know? Like what? I don't know. I find those kinds of questions extremely infuriating. Good on you, Jerry, for getting through this, man. That's frustrating as hell.
That was a tough one. It wasn't getting any better, and it was just going on, and I was accruing more and more time.
Let me ask you this one then, to see if you would have billed for this. I had one of my oldest customers reach out to me about an Optimum issue. She's like one of the rare ones that can actually text me. I'm okay with it, right? And she's been around for many, many years. And so she starts texting me about an Optimum issue. She's like, I can't get mail. It's saying the server's down. And I'm like, wait, I haven't heard of any outages. I start looking online to see if there's any outages for Optimum. People in the area are fine. And we start troubleshooting because it's a mail server issue. Then she's like, oh, it's also happening on my phone. What's going on? So I log into her account online. I verify that the password is in fact correct. It's not any of that. And then I had to go do something. So I put one of my guys on. I was like, can you work out with her what's going on? And so a couple hours later, how's it going? And she's like, oh, we figured out the issue. I forgot to pay my bill. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me right now?
Wow.
So all this time, I helped her out. One of my guys helped her out. We spent a whole bunch of time on that, and she just forgot to pay her bill. And so now I'm thinking, we got a bill for that, right? But that's so frustrating. How do you bill like 3 hours for that?
Oh, yeah, that's really frustrating. My standard response to any kind of network outage where it's like the network is just down is you've got to start by calling the cable provider, the internet provider, whoever they are, because, they won't talk to us about your network. You have to make the call. You said earlier, Jerry, they have to call when the problem is happening, and in this case, Sam, problem's pretty permanent if they haven't paid their bill, but that's why it's a good start. And in fact, we had one last week where a client said, my network's down. I have a lot of, FaceTime and Zoom calls today, and I really need the network and what's going on. So I looked at Unify Portal, and I found that he actually has two networks on the same property because he's got like two buildings across the street from each other. Both networks were down. And I thought, well, that's actually kind of a good thing. It's just totally down. It's not like he's having intermittent issues or some devices are acting up or whatever. Call the cable provider. So sure enough, he called the cable provider, found that there was an outage. He then reported back to us and he said, okay, they said it's supposed to be fixed as of 11 a.m. I'm still having issues, something like that. We look at it again. I see his network is online. I'm like, okay, so it is back up. But I click on it. The network app never loads in the portal. It just loads some of the little widgets or whatever, and it keeps spinning, and then it kind of times out. And, Then Tim tried it and he's having the same experience. We look again, I don't know, maybe it's still down. Like you can tell that, I passed along this to Judy so she could call the client and say, is it still down? And then she asked me, she said, is there somewhere he can check? So I look it up and sure enough, there's an outage map. There's an outage affecting 17 customers, one node, like one street. So sure enough, it's like back on the radar. The outage that they thought was resolved has now recurred or whatever. So it was really great because I found that we could just go back to that screen, check it again, and then update the client without having to send them back to Optimum. But I like that that's the starting point because Optimum will tell them right away, yeah, your internet's down because you didn't pay your bill. I think always a good starting point. It's just not easy for a client like you're describing, Sam, because they've been around for a while. And if it's like the clients I'm thinking of, they probably expect you to just pretty much do everything.
She's the one that still has a turntable and CD player and VCR in her house. So that'll tell you how far advanced in the tech industry she is.
I just bought a turntable.
Yeah, this is true, actually. So, well, there you go, Jerry. I mean, that explains a lot.
Does she have any vinyl she'd like to sell? Because I'm in the market right now.
She has a few pieces of vinyl, yes.
I would do the Jerry Zigmont 50% invoice.
Yeah, I would agree with that. If you don't feel comfortable charging more than that, that's pretty reasonable, I would say.
I think, in fact, that is what we ended up doing. Also those situations where you're busy with other stuff, but you're trying to help, like texting her back or whatever, and you're not, I don't know, maybe not 100% focused on the issue either. Maybe if I focused on it, I could be like, wait a second, something's fishy about this.
Right.
But that's the time we spent into it. And then I was like I put my new guy on it too. He's like, I don't know what's going on. He's like lost about it.
I shared this on the show where we called up the cable company because the client was wanting to terminate service, and they were saying that they didn't have any record of the business.
Wrong company, yeah, like wrong
and I had
provider.
called the wrong company, yeah.
Oh man. I told you guys about my fiber installation debacle, right? Optimum upgraded to fiber here. So that was a whole big thing. And this is me. This is one of us dealing with something. Imagine a client having to deal with this. And I was trying to upgrade my service to fiber. And the big issue, just as a recap from a previous show, is that my coax was routed to one side of the house, which was fine for my cable modem, but the fiber met the house on the other side. So I couldn't stay where I was with all of my equipment in the one corner of my house. So we ran some
was it a
Ethernet
nook or a
cabling.
corner?
It was a kitty corner nook, actually.
Okay.
So we ran Ethernet from my current equipment all the way to the other side of the house. My neighbor's electrician, so he did that for me. And then these guys were supposed to come. And this is, amongst other things with scheduling debacles and everything like that, it was hell on wheels because the sales team, of course, schedules. And I'm explaining to them exactly how my house is set up. And they're like, oh, yeah. Those guys can install it. No problem. They'll figure it out. And of course, they get there and like, we can't do this. So that's when I figured out I had to run wire across the house. They come back. This other random joker comes by. He's like, yeah, I'm supposed to set up internet here. And I'm like, well, yeah, I'm getting a fiber upgrade. He's like, oh. He's like, they just told me you need Optimum installed. I'm like, I have Optimum. Can't you see that? I already have that. He's like, well, I have this modem here. And I'm like, well, that's not the right modem. He's like, what do I do? I'm like,
wow.
Why are you asking me? So I'm like, hang on, let me go inside and give them a call. So I go, and by the time I come to the front door, I can almost hear the tire screech. He's out of there. He's like, just takes off. And I'm like, what the hell? So this guy just leaves. He used his first opportunity to take off from my house.
Wow.
And so that ensued for another 5 days. I was going back and forth. Finally, I got someone who knew what they were talking about. They came in. They did the install. Within a half an hour, I was up and running with someone who knew what they were doing. But it was just absolutely ridiculous. And this is someone in the industry, so to speak. So someone that might know what they're talking about. And this is what I had to deal with. So sometimes when I think about these situations for customers, I can't imagine what they're put through.
Yeah, no kidding. And I think a lot of the ways that we handle these situations with customers is way better than the kind of customer experience they're getting from a lot of these other companies. So that also puts it in perspective, right? So on a recent show, we were talking about ways of communicating with clients. One method that Jerry was using was texting or chatting using the RingCentral app to basically do SMS texting with clients. And Sam was talking about texting with certain clients, who kind of have that privilege because they've been around long enough. And I've been thinking about this recently too, just, what is the most effective way? And I think sometimes texting is really beneficial, and I'm willing to reconsider that and see how I can incorporate that back into my business a little bit more. But that's not the main form of communication, for this type of business. I think a ticket is the main place where communications with clients can happen, communication amongst our team, notes to ourselves about the status of something, or the to-do list for a certain ticket or whatever. Obviously, a ticketing system is pretty key for that. So we had a question a few months ago, I think it was, by friend of the show, Ted Freitas. I heard you guys talking about daylight again the other day and figured I would give it a shot, and I've been pretty impressed. So there you go, Jerry, daylightmac.com, put in the plug. I'm just having an inner fight with continuing to use our current PSA, Halo PSA, or look at using daylight. This has been a huge struggle over time. That said, I guess a good topic would be to ticket or not to ticket. That's the question. So I think that's a really interesting topic just in general. And of course, the other question of like which ticketing system. And he says, I've heard of a few IT companies talking about doing away with the ticketing system in their entirety and just using email. So I do a lot of stuff. This is Joe speaking again. I do a lot of stuff using email. Of course, I also have a ticketing system we use Repair Shopper. This is always a question for me is like, what do I kind of originate in the ticketing system? Because it's not quite as straightforward and simple as just using email. But of course, a lot of things I do want to capture in the ticketing system. So that's always the gap I'm trying to bridge. Back to Ted, he says, I kind of agree with this theory as clients do not want to use a ticketing system. And it's mostly us, quote unquote, techies who want to use them. So this kind of poses the question, ticket or no ticket? So I thought that was a really good question. There's ways of incorporating the two. Of course, you can just direct your email. You can direct all email into your ticketing system. So if clients have gotten in the habit of emailing, your name at yourcompany.com, they can just keep doing that. And maybe it just funnels into the ticketing system. Or, you can triage through email and forward things into the ticketing system. So you guys both use Daylight. Sam, are you using Daylight for ticketing as well? And Jerry, how do you kind of handle these different questions?
No, I don't use it for ticketing. I use Zendesk. I don't really see why customers would be thinking they don't want to use a ticketing, especially if you're just using email to communicate anyway. It doesn't really change their interface. I mean, it might show the ticketing details, but they're still back and forth trading emails. Mm-hmm. So what if it's a ticket,
Yeah, as long as they can still use email, I think, we want to keep it as simple as possible. I guess one question there, though, is how do they interact directly with the ticketing system? Like, is there an email address they would use for that? For me, it'd be like help@mycompany.com. Whereas if they use joe@mycompany.com, then, they would get me directly on email. Some clients figure out that our ticketing system, when we communicate through the ticketing system with a public comment on a ticket, let's say, or even just like sending an invoice through our ticketing system, they see that it comes from the help address. So some clients think I should use the ticketing system, so they email help, subject line, question, and then of course you get a ticket with the subject question. This is not helpful, It's just worse than if it was just an email. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I kind of think in some cases they email the ticketing system directly and it's worse. And in other cases they email me and they should be in the ticketing system.
I think the ticketing system becomes important when there's more than one person in the organization. If somebody sends me an issue through the Zendesk, I don't use Daylight for ticketing. That's not really what it's designed for. It's a customer relationship management program that does many other things, but it's not designed for ticketing. So when you have more than one person in your organization, it's very important to track when clients are reaching out and to have that chain of documentation versus just looking in my email and responding it to it via email. So if it seems like something that really needs, that's going to be sort of an ongoing thing and I want to keep it as a documented support item, I might forward the actual question to Zendesk and then pick up the baton there and start to carry on the conversation via Zendesk. But most times with me, because it's just me, it doesn't really matter. I have some clients who prefer using Zendesk and other clients who just send me an email. What's really frustrating to me, my bigger problem is sometimes you would have been at that random client months and months ago and you were like troubleshooting email and you made the mistake of sending an email to your personal email address, right, and then it goes into their previous recipients bucket. Yeah. And all of a sudden the client every single time sends it to your personal email address instead of the business address. And every single time I strip out my personal address and I put in my business address and then they hit reply and we're back again. setting to personal. So that's a bigger problem. I see the value in ticketing. I think it's great. It's really important when you have a team of people. The great thing about Zendesk, and Sam probably does the same thing, is if something lands in his inbox that he needs to delegate or just simply he wants in his Zendesk system, you send out the email to, in my case, support@macworksllc.com, and it's in Zendesk, and then you just work from there.
Yeah, part of the benefit there is like you guys are using best-in-class product. I mean, Zendesk is, they've been around for a long time. I've used them. They tend to be really good, and they work really well. And they're great at parsing emails and like knowing how to deal with signing the correct assignee or the correct customer, and probably in their parlance. Whereas like my ticketing system doesn't handle that stuff so well. Like I can forward it in, and then it doesn't strip out the signature stuff from my email. It doesn't handle necessarily figuring out who the originator is, like that this is a question from this client. It's not like, I'm not the customer. I'm just forwarding it into the system. Like, me, I'm the owner. Like, you know what I mean? Like you should know me. Like you don't think I'm not the customer. My ticketing system is just not great, in practice. And I think that discourages me from using it as much. But I think in a perfect world, I would probably do kind of like what Jerry's doing, which is have the client email me and pretty much do a lot through email. And then I can CC my ticketing system or forward the thing into the ticketing system. And then I can just simply like take it to that ticketing system. And then the replies will come from there and go back to that when the client replies back. So if I bring it into the ticketing system, it should kind of stay there. And I think that's probably a good way to work.
I actually have a good idea for a product. I'm sure you guys have used TripIt, where you get some sort of an email from your airline and you just forward it off to TripIt, and it knows exactly what to do with the information and parses it out, like you were saying, Joe, and either adds it to your schedule. Wouldn't it be great? And I'm not sure all the things it could do. There was a service where a client sends us a request for support or whatever, and you just forward it off to your TripIt style ticketing system. And they just knew exactly what to do with all the information. And it might be based on rules that you set up in advance of how to handle certain things. And maybe you could even spit out an auto reply bot, go through the message and say, it's screen repair. It's like, of course we don't do that. And just like spit out where it just happens and you just sit back and you don't even have to worry about it. I like that.
Yeah. I like that too. It actually reminds me of a business idea I've had to like partner with Smith.ai, really build out really comprehensive tier 1 offering, like where like they could field a lot of calls and actually triage a lot of stuff, and I think they already do that for you to some extent, but they could, with their live agents, with the flow chart that they use, they could know how to handle a lot of client requests, not only with this needs an on-site or this gets scheduled remotely and it's going to take 30 minutes or whatever, but also actually that tier 1 support where they would suggest restarting, and they would, if somebody wants a network upgrade, they'd say, can you send some photos of your existing equipment? Like, I'm just off the top of my head thinking of different examples, but I think with your newest idea here, that could be done with machine learning. Let's say I'm Zendesk, right? So Zendesk is running a service where they can see all my communications with my clients. They have a lot of information about how the requests look when they come in and how I reply back to them. If I've sent 100 replies that are something like, can you check your time machine backup? I think the drive is unplugged. You need to reconnect it now. They might see that I typically respond with some form of that. And the keywords are, it could just be a Watchman email, about a drive being disconnected with a certain name. If it says it's a G drive mobile USB-C or whatever it's called, that's probably a direct attached drive that's just not plugged in. I could parse that email from Watchman and just reply to the client directly, pretty much, if I just forward that into my help desk. Maybe it could be forwarded into something like AI@mycompany.com.
Zendesk has a feature where you can set up macros. So you can send your patented response back to them depending on what the request is, and you can make as many macros as you want. But it's interesting, the part about Smith AI is they almost have that built in right now with their chatbot. So if you sign up for their service with the phone, you can do a level of free chat, which I have, but there's other higher tiers that you have to pay for. But if you went to my website and you just put in a question on that chatbot and just say, do you repair cracked screens? You'll have a whole conversation with the bot that basically is very nice and says, no, we don't, go away. call Apple. It's almost like they have the technology already there. We're just trying to connect the wires.
Yeah. Well, again, and like, the machine learning part could learn how to respond or, help them suggest macros to you.
Right.
And, the macro, I assume, is something like, like I use with Text Expander. I read the email myself and I say, I'm just going to start with this response from Text Expander, and I'm going to build it out and edit it from there. But that's pretty manual. But if Zendesk could suggest macros, like it looks like when a client says something about screen repair, you say, go F yourself. So do you want me to just create a macro that says that? And also, do you want me to respond automatically to that email from now on? Like when a new ticket is created, I guess you can do that with macros, right? You can say like when a ticket is created and it mentions, quote, screen repair, respond with this snippet. So I guess you can do that. I just want them to get better at suggesting stuff that could really save me minutes or hours every year.
Recently, in chatting with Google, they have the customer help narrow down the responses a bit more and then provide results based on that. So like it's not just a one click and it's like, I need screen repair, but the bot starts asking additional questions to then hopefully narrow down that focus on something of an article or a reply that can help in that sense. Zendesk isn't that advanced. I'd be curious, Jerry, if you are using some of the macros in there, because I've started going down that path and I've, to be honest, never really finished it to get something going where it's a worthwhile solution for me.
Oh, in Zendesk?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I've been using it ever since I've been using the service. Like 8-9 years? They're great. Because most of the time it's a backblaze issue. That's one of my responses. And then responses like, we haven't heard back from you. We're closing the ticket. Those sorts of things. So they've been really helpful.
Then I need a lesson. Maybe you can charge me 50% off or something, but I need some help on going through these macros here in Zendesk.
No, I could send you some screenshots. They're very basic and simple, and some are dated now, but sure.
Ticket automations obviously can be really powerful. I think it's hard to like formulate those in a way that, is applicable to as many things as possible so they can be useful, but also like keeping your kind of style of communication. You don't want your clients to just like get automated responses and start to think, how do I actually reach someone in the company? This is a lot of automation here. But what I've found, at least with automating tickets, is like the workflow stuff can be automated more easily. So like, for example, I click on my tickets tab here and I see this view that shows all my tickets. But of course, it's filtered based on status. So it's not showing me resolved tickets, obviously, but it's also not showing me like pending tickets on my default view. There's too many. I can also hide things like waiting for parts and, that kind of thing. I've just even found something as basic as having an automation wait for a ticket to become due and then change it from pending to new, so that it can kind of bubble up back to the top of the list. So I think there's some things you can do aside from like the client communication stuff in just automating the workflow around tickets. And maybe this doesn't apply to Jerry as a, more of a one-person operation. But for me, this helps me when I need to be aware of a lot of tickets, even including other people's tickets, but I can't necessarily look at those on my kind of default view. So there's things you can do to automate the workflow of a ticket through your system. And I think that's worth looking into as well.
To a lot of extent, I don't take advantage of some of the tools and workflows that are there to make my job a little easier. And sometimes I just keep pounding away at the job that I am doing instead of spending the extra time to try and make it more efficient. I think I'm definitely guilty of stuff like that because there are functionalities that are built into what I already use that I'm just not taking full advantage of.
Yeah, well, it's an example of working on the business when a lot of times we're stuck working in the business, as the saying goes. So, yeah, I love when I have time to do that kind of thing where I can work on the business more, and the benefit is compounding over time. It's just hard to sometimes like peel away from the work at hand that the client is waiting for and actually do that stuff. But, things do evolve over time. And it got me thinking about a client you mentioned recently, Sam, if we have time to discuss this now. But you mentioned a client from like 10 years ago that recently kind of re-engaged with you. And I thought, that's an interesting scenario for a lot of reasons. Rates come to mind, but also like practices and how you work and things like that. And I wonder what it's like to revisit a client from so long ago with kind of like your modern rate structure practices and tools and software and systems and things. So how'd that go? Are you working with them again?
Yeah, it looks like we're going to sign on the dotted line, but that was interesting because when I first worked with them many years ago, we did none of this stuff at all, like none of this MSP stuff or any of the tools that were out there. So we were just kind of break fix and doing what we need to do when we were called. I mean, it was totally hourly billing. It took us years after that before we even got into the MSP game. So when they called us up, they had been using a local MSP company. It wasn't working out anymore. Just things were not going the right way. So they called us up and I was like, well, yeah, we do all this stuff now. My technical contacts there were no longer really there. So the team I was meeting with, along with the employees that I had worked with in the past, it was kind of new to them anyway. So that was fine. I just kind of came in as an MSP. They do have a local internal, I should say, IT presence. We're going to probably be more like, pulling the marionette strings, doing like the MDM stuff and the monitoring stuff and all that other jazz, but not get in the fray of every day my mouse doesn't work kind of thing, because they have a guy inside that will take the brunt of that, which I kind of like.
Wow, yeah.
If I'm being honest.
That's great.
Right?
Yeah,
right? And hopefully he'll just kick it up to us when he's like, hey, I can't figure this out. The one thing I will say about that, though, is it was an interesting one. We try and bundle in, as I've said on many shows in the past, that we try and bundle in our per computer rate, per device rate, along with some discounted hourly per month. And they didn't want to do the hourly per month because they didn't think they would need it. Mm-hmm. So they're doing the per computer stuff, which they're paying for the MDM and Splash Top and all that stuff that we bundle in, but they're willing to pay our hourly rate to call us when they need us. I'm curious to see how that will go, because just like you guys, my hourly rate is much higher than our discounted contractual rate. So I'm not giving them a break on that because they decided to move away from any predetermined hours. So like I said, it'll be interesting to see if they call and we start billing 15 minutes here and there. That's kind of expensive. If they start to rethink that part of the relationship.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I wonder, exactly like you said, how that's going to play out, because chances are they do need some kind of hourly stuff. So are they going to want to just pay full rate for that? And it seems like that probably will change. But maybe this is just a way of, like kind of dipping their toes in a little bit and testing the waters again. I
don't think they have as good of a handle internally as they might think they do. The guy is really nice. I like him. He seems like a nice dude, but not sure how well versed he is on any of this. And if he wants to start to poke around on the MDM side of things, once we give him access, how bad will that go? Will he start to try things internally and be like, oh, I can send this, whoops, and then just start calling us with emergencies. So
that's a really tough spot to be in, where, that could easily happen. And then you have to do some damage control, like who issued this command that had this effect,
I actually had to do that recently with a client. Something went haywire with a computer that was supposed to be re-provisioned for somebody. How did this happen? Someone issued a lock command to the device. We're like, where's the password? We got to go looking in the logs. I'm like, who did this? And it turns out someone internal at the company, the one point person that does have access. We don't just give everyone access. Right. But he went in, hit the button, locked the computer, didn't tell anybody, and was off for the day. I almost wanted to pull his access after that. I was like, that's uncool, because you just made us work an extra hour to figure that out.
That's not a good situation. Wow.
I'll go you one better. I have a medical office. Very, very rarely see them. Key person in the office goes away on vacation. They have a new hiree, and the new hiree wants to do a good turn, so she updates all the computers to Monterey. And they call me because Mac Practice won't open anymore, and they've got old machines. They've got machines that are too old to even communicate with a Monterey server. It was a real disaster.
Bad news. So what's the end result here? What are they doing?
They had a time machine backup, and I rolled them back. I reformatted the drive and rolled them back to an earlier version, and then restored from a backup of Mac Practice prior to the they lost about a week. But they said, quiet week. I was away on vacation, and so she thought she was doing, a good thing. And I'm like, okay, you guys are cool with it? I'm cool with it. Here's my bill.
For 50% off.
Well, anything else change with that client, Sam, coming back in? Like, did your recommendations change? I think I made a note that you talked to them about doing things in the cloud versus the server. I imagine like 10 years ago, the cloud wasn't really that common.
This is something that was related to them, but more of a question that I don't think I fully grasp Adobe's cloud features yet. I don't know if you guys have worked in this. Their cloud storage and functionality for collaboration is not great. Adobe's very strict about, even though we know many companies do this, but Adobe's always like, we don't support storing on a server. We don't support storing in any other cloud environment. It has to be on your computer, or it has to be in Adobe's, Creative Cloud.
Right.
It's like, okay, but your Creative Cloud sucks because like it doesn't have backup history. There's no versioning. Sharing is kind of rudimentary. What is the supported method only using theirs that's not very good? This kind of relates to this client because they're looking at cloud options for Adobe, but I don't have a lot of expertise on the Adobe Creative Cloud. I'll admit that. But do you guys have any situations where you're using cloud storage for InDesign or Photoshop documents in any way?
I have had a couple occasions to look into it, but no clients actually diving in fully with it. In one case, they didn't offer enough storage capacity. They have like a per user. It's just so unclear to me. It's like you could be on a Creative Cloud team of 10 people, right? Mm-hmm. And each user at the time, anyway, this was a few months ago, gets like 1 terabyte of cloud storage. So then I'm like, okay, but it's not about like one user's own files. It's about collaborating across multiple users. So how does that mean that like I have a huge chunk of storage that's like whatever multiple of users times 1 terabyte, you know? And it was like, I think I eventually got the answer and they said yes, but I was really not convinced that it wasn't just a sales tactic to say like, yes, that's true. Just answer my question in the positive way. That's like probably what I want to hear, you know? So I don't know. I'm very curious if anyone else out there has had more experience than I have. Jerry, what about you?
They were right. Each person gets 1 terabyte. I would not recommend any kind of cloud sharing because I don't really think they're set up for it. Collaboration, it's very primitive sharing of documents. And I don't think there's any other solution really, other than storing it locally on a server. And then when you want to work with the file, you download it locally to the computer. And when you're done, you put it back in and maybe have some sort of a scenario where you're using some sort of linking with Dropbox on Synology where that's your network SharePoint. And so it's backed up.
They really don't support that though, right? Isn't that technically they don't? I mean, I guess what you're saying, Jerry, is like you could have like a folder on your computer that also gets like synced using some other means to other storage locations. But that's just then feels a little hacky, you know, for that. Because then like you could have version control issues. But like, yeah, you're talking about doing basically like manual version control, like checking a file in, checking a file out. Remember they used to have version control or what was it? Version queue? Is that the name way back when?
I don't remember exactly the naming convention, but yes, I do remember that.
I have this corner for the show, I guess, of technical truisms. You know, it's like telling people to restart their printer, but also power cycle it. That still works. You know, that's something I've been telling people for 20 years, and it actually still works in a lot of cases. So here's another one, which is that Adobe, Microsoft, and Apple all say you can't work off of a server. We don't support working off of a server. Apple actually sold a server. So I never quite understood what that kind of loophole was. But of course, Adobe is going to say that, and Microsoft, they'll say we don't support working off a server. And then I say to clients, you know, of course, everyone still does it. This is still a very common workflow, but like they technically don't support it. Now, that used to be the case with iPhoto and Photos. You know, they really don't want you to put your photo library on like a NAS, you know, and access it even over like a fast gigabit or 10 gig, you know, Ethernet connection. They don't want you to do that. And that used to be something that they technically couldn't stop you from doing. Like it would technically work, but they just would discourage you and didn't want you to do it. As far as I know, that has changed, and now they actually stop you from doing it. Have you guys seen that in practice yet? My understanding is with Photos app, if you have a Photos library stored on a NAS, you just can't open it from a Mac. You'd have to copy it to the Mac in order to open it.
In truth, I have not tried that in a long, long time. So I don't know is that like officially that they won't allow it to open, or it's just something you've seen that just doesn't work. It's kind of broken.
So I haven't seen it yet either. This only really applies to one client of mine that is using this kind of legacy workflow with a lot of photo libraries and things. And I've only read about this, I think this started even in Big Sur, in fact. So I'm assuming it's still the case in Monterey and it will be going forward. But yeah, my understanding is the app, I guess, must have some logic to say, is the volume that this file, this library is stored on, is this a, you know, network attached volume as opposed to direct attached? So, and it won't open it, you know, it just won't open it if it's not direct attached storage. So that's my understanding. I'm curious if anybody else has encountered that, but I thought that was a really interesting sort of policy decision to actually change that long-standing practice of discouraging you, but allowing it technically to happen. I think they just want to minimize support calls for these kind of edge case, you know, scenarios.
I would love to hear more from someone that knows better, but I talked with Adobe support and they were pretty, sorry, submit some feedback. We suck at it, basically. I really pushed them hard because I was like, this is kind of silly. Like, you don't support anything else, but your own solution kind of blows. So that's the one thing that I'm kind of bummed about, because if I'm going to start supporting this more, I got to have some better answers.
Well, and imagine if they changed their policy where they wouldn't allow you to actually access the documents on a server and you had to tell people to drag and drop back and forth. I mean, that'd be a nightmare. But they could do it. They could force you to use Adobe. Once their cloud product is better, I wouldn't even necessarily have a problem with that. But they would need to make sure that it's really, really, really solid first.
I ordered a set of AirPods Pro on Amazon not too long ago.
And they went
I was
to
excited.
Texas?
Well, here's the thing. So I got an alert that said, congratulations, your AirPods were delivered from Amazon. So I go racing outside my house and I'm like, they're not here. So I'm looking in my mailbox. I'm looking by the garage in case my dog was out, and I'm looking all over and I'm like, oh my God, this is not good. I just got jerried. So I go looking in the Amazon account, and I see in there, it's a picture of my package delivered, and it's a house with a brick face, which I don't have a brick face.
Whoa.
No, I'm like, this really did happen. So I started to freak out that this happened to me, and I'm panicking for a moment. I didn't reach out to you guys for whatever reason. I'm thinking, what do I do here? How do I find this out? And then I realized for a moment, the house next to me has a small brick face around the front door. So I go running out there, and at this point it's starting to rain out, and I see my package laying there just as the photo was taken. So it all came to a happy ending, but I really did get nervous, Jerry, that I just got taken for a loop like you did.
You're lucky the neighbor didn't have some kind of glitter bomb ready to fire off,
Jerry does his voices of customers of all kinds.
Am I on the cloud?
Joe spins his deeply detailed yarns all the time.
I have a whole story about this.
Sam is on the road again, phoning in from a hotel.
At least we know where I am.
Half a century combined of Apple expertise right now. My Mac is slow.